One. Welcome in to the Week 7 episode of NFL edition of Betting the Pitch with your host, real_G Warner, and my good friend, A_SCHNITKER, Andrew Schnicker, coming in live from Austin, Texas. How are you doing tonight, Schnick, and how are we going to do this week?
I'm feeling good. The weather has gotten a little cooler down here, and that just reinvigorates me. And this is the time of year where you have to create your own energy. We're hitting that sometimes lull. It's not going to happen.
Got it. Yeah, bye weeks are coming in. Snick's just really excited to start looking at weather reports and tell me how much wind there is in Cleveland. But more for that later. We're going to go through our 6-pack of games. Of course, the highly televised ones that are standalones by themselves. Then we got 3 games that we're picking ourselves because there's no London matchup this week. Finally.
Thank you.
Thank gosh, because ultimately no one really wants to wake up for those things anyway, because they're all pretty much trash and feel like it's just throwing darts with your eyes closed. But before we get started, so if you're on YouTube, please hit subscribe for an Apple Podcast or on Spotify. Leave a 5-star review. It'd be really helpful to get us up the search rankings. If you're not a member of my Patreon, check it out, patreon.com, just real_G Warner. Get all my picks, leans, write-ups, everything right as I get them. If you download the app, you can turn on notifications and you get a little buzz every time I update something. And if you're not following both of us on Twitter, we'll shout those out later in the podcast as well as we just did, probably if you want to rewind a little while ago. But it's time to get into the football games this weekend, almost at baseball. So let's get into it. The first matchup that we're going to go over is the Thursday Nighter, which has a lot on the line because I don't really know who's going to be quarterback for the Jacksonville Jaguars. So Jacksonville on the road at New Orleans, open to pick. It's now New Orleans -1. Total has dropped from 42.5 to 39. What do you think? First of all, who's going to take the snaps for Jacksonville?
Oh man. Well, so we'll do a little news report here. Trevor Lawrence, we're doing this Tuesday night. He did some sort of practice Tuesday, limited practice, though CJ Beathard took most of the first team reps. So we're talking short week, no real practices for these teams when they're playing on a Thursday. It seems tough to think that even though Lawrence said, hey, I feel fine, things are going better than I expected. I'm paraphrasing there. But the quotes out of practice on Tuesday were along those lines. I don't know how you could expect him to go without any sort of reps, but I don't want to rule him out.
Yeah, I'm thinking why use him? Yes, your division's a little bit more competitive than you were expecting, but the Titans are 2 games back, I think, at 2-4. Jags at 4-2. I think Colts are 3-3. Houston's 3-3. So I guess it's a little bit tight right now, but ultimately your season is hinging upon this quarterback, not on CJ Beathard. So in my opinion, I'm expecting, and based on where the line has moved, because I think Jacksonville would have been a favorite here. Maybe a very slight one, but and of course those numbers move between the threes on either side. They can move pretty quickly just off of small bets, especially early in a week. So and I think with the total dropping to 39, I think that's speaking to a little bit about the concern for quarterback position not really being up to the normal Jaguars standards. But honestly, I'm not sure that T-Law has really been that strong this year. I feel like Jacksonville's defense has been really strong. And honestly, I think that's been their best unit so far this season. And you could probably say the same thing for the New Orleans Saints. So for me, I mean, 39 is a low total. Anything below 40 in the NFL seems extremely small. But based on the lack of success from all these teams running the football, and especially in red zone opportunities, I think we're at the worst since 2011 now. What do you think about maybe an under here, though certainly no weather to be a concern unless it's hurricane season?
Yeah, you've got the Saints, who we talked about them with the defense that they have. A veteran group, I am interested to see, which means, they'll be prepared, but it is a short week. And so you're talking about a group of older guys that are having to rebound quicker. Derek Carr he's been dealing with a little bit of an injury. We talked about with a shoulder from early in the year, and those things obviously can make an impact for a quarterback. So it's been mixed results at best for Derek Carr. And yeah, I agree with you. I think Jacksonville all the way across the board has has improved as the season has gone on. I think their offense, they got a little bit healthier on the offensive line. I've been impressed with what I've seen there protection wise. The difference is if Lawrence in previous weeks has had time to throw the ball, he's been able to go through his routes and then realize Calvin Ridley's doubled up and can find Christian Kirk or someone else. So I don't really have a lot of concerns. I think Jacksonville is improving, but if without Trevor Lawrence, I would under or pass. That's it. That's it for me.
I'm New Orleans or under if no Trevor Lawrence, because I'm not really, I mean, despite what we saw from Etienne last week, I don't think Jacksonville can run the ball against good defensive line. I think road teams, especially in these little short setups going on the road midweek after a pretty taxing divisional matchup, I think a lot of things point to New Orleans given a 1 right now, which I imagine will probably climb if Lawrence is announced out or is inactive on Thursday night. Would it get above 3? Possibly, but probably will stick there, probably maximum. I think I'm still interested with no Trevor Lawrence at New Orleans -3. And of course, that 39 I like, but that probably falls as well without T-Law. Moving on now we'll do our 3 selections of games, because we'll start as always with the main slates, or the Thursday night, Sunday night, Monday night. So we'll go straight to probably the biggest game of the weekend, and good for Sunday Night Football. They get to pick their best. I don't know if they flex this one. Maybe they saw this coming, but Miami visits Philadelphia. Open Philly, a 2.5-point favorite. That has fallen to 2, but very juiced right now, Bet Online. So it's probably hanging between that 2 and 2.5. Total has started at 52.5, dropped to 51.5, 52.5 to 51.5, as I'm stuttering now for some reason. Of course, these two teams went in different ways. Miami fell behind 14-0 to Carolina, the worst team in the league so far to start this season. Came back and won pretty handily. Philadelphia led for almost the entire game against the New York Jets on the road, but they also didn't score, I think, after the second quarter, which coincidentally happened when Lane Johnson went out. So where do we think this number is moving? Do we think it gets to 3 even if Johnson is ruled in? Do we think it gets lower if Johnson is ruled out? Or I guess generally, what direction do you think this big Sunday nighter will go?
I would say it's going to move in the Dolphins' direction. That would be my expectation. We've talked. Let's look at the Eagles' defense as it is right now instead of what it was at the end of last year, which was still not its best unit, but it obviously lost a lot of pieces in the offseason. Miami wants to run the ball. We know that that's how they're going to have success. It's the Kyle Shanahan tree and trickles all the way down with Mike McDaniel. So can Philadelphia, with a very talented defensive front seven, can they stop the Dolphins' ground attack? Can they contain all those weapons? Tyreek Hill, a little bit of a knock, but he came back in, seemed fine. So I think the Dolphins are going to have quite a bit of success, because I think most teams this year have seen success against the Philadelphia defense. It's still a dangerous proposition going into Philadelphia Sunday night game. That's one of the more difficult environments in the NFL. And our last experience with Miami on the road was at Buffalo, where they couldn't keep up with the Buffalo Bills. What do you see from the other side of the ball? Because this may be where the game is won. We're talking about an Eagles offense that hasn't lived up to expectation versus the Dolphins defense.
I've not really been in love with the Miami defense. I feel like potentially I'm overreacting to their performance in Buffalo. But that was a similar scenario here, where everyone was sweet on Miami after they dropped 70 points on a hapless Denver Broncos. And then here they got a big win. Philly's being talked about. Jalen Hurts is getting a lot of negative publicity, probably the first time in his life, which is a big setup, I guess, maybe than when he lost his shot to Tua. That was probably some too. But anyway, I think my biggest question is, honestly, when I heard you say that you've been unimpressed with the Philadelphia defense. Maybe it hasn't been on the same level as last season, but I feel like they are going to cause a lot of problems. And I think that yes, you could see diversity hire, Mike McDaniel potentially scheming a little bit better than anyone would expect from him or against the Philadelphia defense, but I still saw them really controlling the New York Jets. I mean, it's certainly a different proposition altogether, but on the road, a little bit more difficult than at home against Miami. I think the crowd's going to be nuts, and I'm really starting to kind of warm up to teams that have good pass rushes or at least just good defensive lines at home where other teams have to use silent counts, because unfortunately, it doesn't seem like that is, I mean, there's not a lot about home field that matters to me anymore. But I think that does. Silent counts are a big deal, and I think is a big reason why we saw Dallas dominate the Los Angeles Chargers offensive line Monday night. Regardless, long way into this. I'm pretty interested in Philadelphia. I feel like ultimately Jalen Hurts is going to have to realize that he doesn't have the arm talent of some of the other players, 32 that play his position in this world. The awful decision. I mean, if he didn't get intercepted by one guy, it was the other guy was going to get it probably on his 3rd and 9 or whatever 3rd and long throw that really cost Philadelphia the game. I imagine that's going to get him pretty in tune. Plus, I imagine it also will make the Philadelphia offense a lot more motivated to try to get that lead and hold on to it. Plus, we've seen Miami kind of fall on their faces so far in big games. So I'm looking at the Philadelphia direction. I don't think I have really a feel for a total. I think if you like Miami, you probably like over. But if you're more into the Philadelphia side, I think you're expecting them to really stop Miami or potentially score in a shootout with them. I think both are possible, but I think Philly wants to play a more grinded out, tush push, brotherly shove type of game. And that still seems like something to me that can't be stopped. And I think if Philadelphia, if they've ever struggled with focus potentially on the road, closing out an okay but not great Jets team, I think at home with the Phillies doing what they're doing in the NLCS, I feel like it's a good time to be in Philadelphia as we speak.
Let's looking at the Dolphins this season. Now you can only play who's on your schedule, and they've been covering these games, but they're 5-1. They're 5 wins at LA Chargers, close win there. Patriots, Broncos, Giants, Panthers. You're looking at 4 of those 5 teams are going to be picking in the first 8 picks.
And they were trailing Carolina 14-0 there. I think they were trailing even though they scored 70 on the Broncos. They're going back and forth at the Chargers in week 1 because I remember thinking my app was messed up seeing Tua and Justin Herbert in the red zone so often. I feel like Miami might be one of those teams that are just going to try to outscore you. And I feel like that is so good against those top 8 pickers. But I don't think it's as good against a Super Bowl caliber type of team as we saw Philadelphia, even with a lead in the Super Bowl last year.
Yeah, these are the 2 best offenses in the basic, if you want to look at basic stats. So yes, you're going to see most of the public pouring onto the over here when you talked about
Sunday night as well.
Yeah. Sunday night, oh my gosh.
Yes.
This is
dropped
a very exciting game.
It's dropped a point from 52.5 down to 51.5, but potentially we could see some buyback in. If you like over, I feel like general rule is to grab it early, especially in these primetime slates. Moving now to Monday night, we'll go San Francisco at Minnesota. We got the Niners at 7-point favorite at open, dropped to 6.5, but it's pretty juice at the moment, so probably might climb back to 7 before kickoff on Monday night. And the total has dropped from 47 to 44. I think based on San Francisco with some injuries. I don't know if you call them cluster injuries when it's all of their skill players and their best ones, but I think those are usually reserved for offensive line, defensive line, things of that nature. But when you lose potentially Christian McCaffrey and potentially Deebo Samuels, I saw a lot of highlights from him in a tunnel, not so much on the field on Sunday. And then you had the incredible run the clock out and then miss a field goal at the buzzer, essentially, for San Francisco last weekend. There's one play left, but you got that. And then on the other side, you got Minnesota, who got a big road win thanks to Justin Fields' broken or dislocated thumb, and his backup came in and literally couldn't survive one possession without fumbling a ball for a defensive touchdown. Yes, I might have had the Bears.
Are you bitter?
I mean, I've been in pretty good position on a couple. I guess this wasn't always that good, but against the Broncos, I'm never going to forget. Thank you, Justin Fields. Anyway, so onto this one, since Chicago's not named here. Minnesota, I thought their offense was okay without Justin Jefferson, but only scoring 19 points and 7 of those coming directly from defense. does make me question them. And I feel like it's a great spot for San Francisco to bounce back from a game they could have easily won and stayed undefeated, but ultimately kickers are kickers.
I would assume you're seeing some of the market respond. We haven't moved to that 7 because that's a key number. Post Tuesday, the ESPN sources were pretty positive in terms of the injury report for the 49ers, with McCaffrey potentially having a chance to go as the season or as the week progressed. Trent Williams, obviously their all-world tackle, also better than they expected, and then Debo as well. So we're still 6 days away from this one kicking off. So getting the extra day of rest obviously makes a difference. 49ers defense, hey, don't get me with the Browns 49ers game, that there was some weather element to that. It was not the best.
Here comes the wind.
No, not necessarily wind, but it matters in terms of if you're creating your own lines, if you're doing your own numbers, some of these games have to be weighed differently in terms of the metrics because of the environment that they're played in. And I think that's one that you would need to consider, how much you weigh both sides of the ball into that. And I'm talking about the defense as well and how good it's played. I don't think it's as great as maybe some of the numbers have shown so far with 49ers defense. But the Minnesota Vikings, without Justin Jefferson, who is the heart of that offense. I don't know, like the running game, Madison's not doing much. Jordan Addison can fill in fine, but without Justin Jefferson and Kirk Cousins potentially under pressure is not something I want to get behind.
Yeah. Say again. Sorry, what was that last thing?
Kirk Cousins under pressure, not someone I want to get behind.
Yeah. He does like to panic and fall down too, which is, so we might want to look at a sack total here for the Niners, who should be pretty, I think, similar to a Philadelphia point of view. They should be pretty interested and motivated to try to make a big lead, an even bigger one, especially after kind of choking those 2 games up last weekend. So now we'll go to our 3-pack of our selections. And since I'm a gentleman, I'll let you go first, Nick.
Okay. Well, let's go to Arrowhead Stadium. Is that what it's called now?
It is I thought GEHA Field might have been Geha or Yeehaw or something, but it's GEHA Field. I was welcomed myself on Thursday night last week by Patrick Mahomes. And when Taylor invited me into her suite, I said, I can't get my friends in, so I can't go tonight. But
that's loyal. That's loyalty.
I am a lot of things, and loyal is one of them. So the Chargers are visiting Kansas City. Opened at a 6-point favorite, down to 5.5 right now, despite short week for the Chargers, extra long week for Kansas City, almost as long as a bye. Total has dropped from 52 to 48. And I'm pretty curious, puzzled, you might even say, about the movement here. What about the Chargers last night? Just honestly, Justin Herbert overthrowing everyone for 3 hours straight. The ridiculous 4th down inabilities. I mean, I don't hate going for on 4th down. I don't at all. But when you can't run the ball and you really can't do much on a silent count at home, silent count again, get drink every time you hear it from now on in these podcasts. That's my new thing. But silent count at home, can't get off the ball. The Chargers, they're a team I want to bet against whenever I can. So why are people betting them right now?
I think you might be seeing some pushback on the Chiefs numbers in terms of division, in terms of how they've performed. And this is total trend. And so this is something that we would always advise against. You should look at the numbers and look at what's happening in the now to make your decisions. But we've talked about the Chiefs and the market in general. They've not covered in the last couple of years in most of these spots, and especially when they're at home, and especially within the division. The Chargers will certainly have this game, even with Kellen Moore and the whole connection between him and the Cowboys. This week is something that they're not going to look past, and could potentially have been getting prepared for, even when we're talking about a Monday night game against the Cowboys. Because these matter more. The division rivalries, those things matter. I thought Herbert was fine on Monday night.
That makes one of us.
I thought he was fine. We've had separate chats with other friend groups and talking about the perspective that we have, expectations we have for quarterbacks.
They're pretty
so
high. They're pretty darn high for this guy, I gotta say.
uh, the Cowboys defense didn't really get home on Herbert very often until the very end there, but they did enough to push him out of the pocket to have to make decisions quickly. And so I think even though the Chiefs defense has been the rock of the team so far this year, I think that they will see some success there with Eckler getting back into form. Such a key piece of that offense. He's not just a running back. Really, his value is in the pass and the throw game. So I like that side, and I don't know if you want to take the defensive side, but I do have some thoughts as well. But
I will remind you that I was in attendance in good old Arrowhead last week, and the Chiefs did actually cover a 10.5 point spread with a nice field goal to win by 11 on a 19-8 score. If you had that as your final score, you probably don't even need to play Powerball. But I agree wholeheartedly. Kansas City's defense seems to be the best part of that team. Maybe that has stuck in people's minds. Everyone saw how bad of a game that was on Thursday. Yes, I only get to see the good ones, but ultimately, I think Sky Moore's has done nothing for me. Rashee Rice potentially looks like something in the future, but that's got a long way to go. Pacheco seems to be, and Mahomes are the guys. But Mahomes is, to me, leaps and bounds better than Justin Herbert. I remember the hilarious times when the Chargers, I think, were a favorite over the Chiefs, maybe as recently as last season to win the division, something close to that. That didn't work out, surprisingly. It just feels really weird to me that there's, yes, I understand Kansas City struggles with covering. Yes, there's a decent backdoor angle here to lose on a late touchdown by 4 or by 3 or something like that. But not at a full touchdown. I feel like they're just not worried about teasers here either. I mean, yeah, you don't like to waste numbers around 0, but I mean, getting the Chiefs where they could just simply win at home feels like a pretty nice angle. So there's got to be some money out there that likes the Chargers on shorter rest on the road. As we saw with silent counts, there we go again. Doesn't work very well for them at home. Never mind on the road. I just don't really get it. Yeah, I could see some money coming in on the under because the Chiefs offense has looked like the Jets offense so far this year. Just add Patrick Mahomes to it. I mean, Kansas City, I think, can rush the passer. Chris Jones has been good ever since he's got paid. And then I don't really see it. And I've never seen it with the Los Angeles Chargers of San Diego, but I just haven't.
I think one side, to me, the concern with the Chargers on the defensive side is their secondary. Is this core of receivers the team that's going to take advantage of it? Just looking
probably not. Probably not. I mean, but they still got that. I mean, I basically was watching the same play on Thursday night, which is everyone floods to one side, and then eventually Kelsey stops and sits in the middle. So you either take him or you take the receivers. Seems like everyone takes the receivers because they don't want to give up 25 yards or give up 12 to Kelsey. But that play, honestly, they could have run it all night, I feel like, and it would have never. I mean, maybe there's a big difference to step up from the Denver Broncos to the Los Angeles Chargers of San Diego, but I'm just not really sure. I mean, I'm not really a favorite guy. If anyone listens to me on any podcast that I do, follows on Twitter or anything like that, or have ever talked to me in life, probably. But I gotta say, every second I speak more about this, I'm like, wow, I like the chefs even more.
The only favorite I know is from 2 weeks ago. The only favorite we've ever discussed, and I know that you've done anything with, was 49ers last 2 weeks ago.
Yes,
and
that was a Sunday night best bet winner from Andrew Snicker back when we had 2-0 a couple weeks ago. Thank you for reminding me. So I'm gonna take the next one from our little 3-pack of the 6-pack, the little special items potentially. And since I've completely forgotten who I was going to go to, I'm going to go to Detroit and Baltimore. I don't want to bury the lead to the end. That to me is also, if you're not looking at Miami at Philadelphia, that to me is the biggest game of the week. We got Baltimore coming off London a couple weeks ago, but I think had a bye coming into this one, which should have set
Baltimore was this last Sunday. This will be their first game.
Yeah. Great. So everything
changes now.
Awesome. Yes. Okay. They're coming back from London. I feel a lot better. Hint about where I'm going to go here. The Ravens, almost called them the Orioles, open at 2.5 point favorites, pretty juiced, have climbed to 3. Looks like it's about 3 across the board. The Detroit Lions are visiting the Charm City. Totals opened at 45, dropped to 41.5, which I don't think is a weather thing, but that to me is a big statement on the Detroit defense. But ultimately, the spread's climbed a little bit, so I don't really know if I can really say that fully. Baltimore got to London very early compared to the Titans, who just looked like they were completely lost for the first 2 quarters. Made a run late, but it wasn't good enough. What do we think about Baltimore? Did the London game and Tottenham Hotspur Stadium change your opinion that, or at least change my opinion that I've said to you? Should it change my opinion that Baltimore is not the Baltimore of old?
Yeah, I'm with you on that. There's just something's not clicking with that offense. I've chalked it up for most of the season to growing pains with the new coordinator. Lamar Jackson getting back into real true game shape or game form is probably the better word to put that after the last couple of years of not playing a full season.
Yes, business decisions. Yes.
The running backs, they are the most snake bit franchise in the league in terms of running back injuries. I know, we can weigh how much running backs really matter, but I think when you're talking about just a cumulative effect, it does make a difference there. I've never been impressed with the wide receivers that they've tried to draft and develop. And the defense, I think if Tannehill doesn't get hurt, I think the Titans cover that game. The way that the thing changed, and you talked about it with the Titans coming over so late, we've seen that trend with teams starting slow when they go to London so late in the week. But the Titans were picking up steam. The Derrick Henry Wildcat run. I think the Ravens were boosted early in the season by some offenses and some weather that made those numbers look a lot better than they were.
Yeah, I think, frankly, the Titans were in the zone to cover, and I was like really mad that I didn't bet them for a little bit later in that game. And then all of a sudden flipped around and was very happy I didn't. I don't know that I fully, I guess we could probably switch to the Detroit side. I don't know that I fully believe in Detroit, but I started to kind of take a little bit of notice when they were favored at Green Bay. And really just throttled a Packers team on Thursday Night Football way back when, on a short week in division, being favored on the road when I wasn't expecting it. Was at least it made some sort of dent in my mentals that I wanted to remember that. And then I thought took care of business at Tampa. Maybe it was a little bit closer, but the weird 3:25 Central Time, 4:25 Eastern Time starts in Tampa so they can avoid like a string of lightning storms or something like that they do in the fall. That was, I think, telling a little bit more. And ultimately Detroit has, I think, taken care of business this whole season. I don't know that they're under the radar necessarily, but they're coming from so far below like 0-16 seasons of the past. Like, I think there's still a lot of people that don't, including myself, that don't really trust Jared Goff, but I know that he at home indoors all of a sudden is a much better player, but I just, the Baltimore like run heavy offense, I think is why they get so many guys hurt. I don't know that they're the same type of team with the missing pieces from their running game. I think to your point about the receivers that Baltimore can't really seem to draft, that ends up making everything on Mark Andrews. And he's just never going to be a big shot, like 60-yard touchdown type of guy, unless he's in the Cotton Bowl and Texas doesn't cover him, which it's a really bad memory that just came to my mind, right in my eye hole, basically, too, when I was sitting in the end zone a couple of years back. But I just don't see the big plays. I mean, Detroit, you could argue that maybe they don't have a lot in them. They've got a ton of injuries. I don't know Amon St. Roz or the Sun God's status for this one, but Jahmyr Gibbs seems like he's been pretty banged up, and I'm not even sure what he is as a rookie anyway. But give me 3 points right now. Yes, I could have Seattle, another Seattle getting 3 on the road and completely outplaying, dominating yardage and trips to the red zone and everything you could possibly do in a football game and not cover +3 despite being inside the red zone, I think 3 times in the fourth quarter. But I really like what Detroit's done so far. And, the trip back might be a little bit more difficult for Baltimore. And we'll get into the last game of our 6-pack.
Go ahead. The Jared Goff renaissance of what he was on the road, like it was basically an auto bet if Jared Goff playing on the road in any sort of elements, right? The last 2 road games, throwing for 300 plus yards, taking care of the football. I think it goes a lot to Ben Johnson, the offensive coordinator, what he's done with that offense and how balanced they really are. David Montgomery has just been a consistent force for them when he's been healthy. I was not interested in many Lions offerings this offseason, but they've definitely proven me and other people wrong.
64 and a low % chance of precipitation on Sunday in Baltimore. A 17-mile-an-hour wind projected, though. That might be something, but ultimately we'll see. With that one and the last one we'll go over, and I think there's some interest here just based on the result from last week and that we already talked the 49ers. We'll talk Cleveland at Indianapolis. Cleveland opened a 2.5-point favorite, is fallen to 2. A little bit curious, but I think might be potentially a little bit about Deshaun Watson potentially not playing again, despite being cleared, I think 2 weeks ago, or maybe even 3 weeks ago. Total is 42.5 and it has fallen to 39. Not a lot of expectations for offense here, which I think is not surprising because Jim Schwartz has been awesome. The Cleveland defense has been historic at this point, and coming off a really big win. Now they got to swallow their pride and take that trip to Naptown. Not take any naps in Indianapolis, but ultimately they're going to be playing in a faster turf surface with a lot more speed and play. Zach Moss didn't have 42 fantasy points last week like he did a couple seasons or weeks ago, not seasons. Maybe there were season totals, but my interest here, I think, is to look at Indianapolis just because of the spot. But I've learned that the spot is not always enough. So I might even like under 39 more than anything.
I think the key to me is Gardner Minshew, who's likely going to have this job for the rest of the year. His style, get the ball out quick. He's going to be accurate. It's not going to wait for long plays to develop and go deep often. Does that neutralize this Cleveland defensive front that is putting up numbers that we haven't seen in decades so far this year? And so the easy thing is to be like, well, there's no way they can sustain that. They could be pretty close. I do think that Gardner Minshew with the right offensive strategy from the Colts is a quarterback that could neutralize that a little bit.
I think that's the best thing and really only thing you can do against Cleveland, unless you can block them, which how many teams can actually do that? Then you got to get them short passes out. It probably means that Indianapolis is not going to run very well this weekend, which is really bad for my fantasy lineup situations, but that's not relevant to everyone on this thing. And I got to say, the under honestly even points to it more because that tells me that Gardner Minshew is going to try to protect the ball, going to take these short passes. They're going to probably move the ball really slowly at a time when Cleveland's going to really not get those turnovers and sacks that really put them in better position. So then Cleveland has to go a longer field because if Minshew's not turning it over, Indianapolis is punting and we're just doing a lot of punts back and forth. Less turnovers, less big plays, I think speaks to under potentially. So let's move now to our best bet portion of the show. As always, I'm going to give Andrew Schnicker, _SCHNITKER on Twitter, the first round. But before we get to that, if you're on YouTube, please hit subscribe. If you're on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, leave a 5-star review. Big for us to get found on the search rankings, and more hits we get, maybe I pull Snick out and we do another podcast every week. I'm not promising that, but that'd be nice. And of course, if you're not a Patreon or patron to my Patreon, patreon.com/real_GWarner, check that out. But let's go to you, Schnick. Lead us.
So we don't talk about our best bets before we do it because I like how it organically goes.
I have no idea where you're going, but I'm glad you're doing organic kale today.
I did have some kale. I had some kale tonight, so I'm feeling great. We're gonna go to the Chargers. We're taking the Chargers plus 5.5.
Wow!
I knew. I was waiting for you.
Fading me. Sheesh.
I'm not fading you.
I'll remind you who's one game up right now, or at least a half game, because I think I took.
Are you? I lost count.
Yeah,
I don't know. I was
half game up.
Counting my winnings from this weekend.
Oh, nice. Cool.
No, we just talked about the defense with the Chargers. I don't think they're getting enough credit on the defensive front, what they've been able to do. I think the secondary is a concern, but I like the system that Brandon Staley plays with that secondary. He passes guys off, which I think is a benefit, and especially with a young group of wide receivers, could create a little bit of not a Patrick Mahomes issue, obviously, like a legitimate receiver issue. I think Herbert has his best game ahead of him. So let's take the Chargers, even with, let's see if we can get that up to 6. I wouldn't always advocate a buy, but if you could get that to 6 for a cheap amount, I would recommend that, or we could wait and see where this goes for the rest of the week.
I think we'll get to 6 at that point. But we'll see what happens with that line as we move forward.
For grading purposes, though, we can go with 5.5 if that's the way you want to do it.
I think it really depends. If you want to throw out a -120, 6 is available. So we can do 6 for record keeping purposes. For my best bet, after I can't believe, honestly, I'm a little disappointed. I feel like I've been faded on my own show, which is disappointing. Yes, our show, I guess you could say it as well. This is the Real_G Warner, and this is Betting the Pitch, NFL edition. You might have just heard Andrew Schnicker fading me with his Chargers +6 best bet for Sunday.
Take favorites. I'm not worried about it.
Yeah, you knew I wasn't going to double up on that one. I'm going to go to the well. I'm going to go with the Detroit Lions +3 at Baltimore. Just not a believer in the Baltimore offense coming back from London. You know, there's potential they hit some pubs while they're over there. It's going to be weird going back from a football stadium in London to a American football stadium in Baltimore. And I just think Detroit can hang in this game. I think 3 points is enough to potentially get a push late. Assuming Pete Carroll actually kicks a field goal outside of 2 minutes. But fortunately, he's not coaching this one or chewing gum or anything like that. So for Andrew Schnicker, A_SCHNITKER, he's going the Chargers +6. I'll give you the Detroit Lions +3. And those are our best bets for week 7 of the NFL. Follow us. And that'll do it for this episode. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks to you, A_SCHNITKER on Twitter. Follow that thing if you haven't already. I'm the Real_G Warner, and we will be back on Tuesday next week. Though I'll probably be recording it in the morning hours, the wee hours from Milano in Italy. So I'll talk to you all soon.